just wanted to start by saying thank you. It's an honor to be here with such an amazing group of people. Thank you, Roger and Mike, for making this happen. And I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about my background. So I started this business about 4 years ago. I'm the CEO and co-founder, and our business is on a mission. And our mission is to spark the creative imagination of kids with hands-on technology. And we do that by creating toys. Toys and digital tools where kids have to build their own toys and then bring them to life with things like coding and electronics. And I'm going to really focus today on technology and creativity and why we believe creativity is such a fundamental part of what kids actually need today when it comes to technology. So creativity, why does it matter? Creativity has been a part of what it means to be human. It is about developing original ideas that have value. And this has driven human achievement since the dawn of time. But being creative is one step beyond imagining it. It actually requires you to do something about it, to make something with it. And that requires us to have the materials and tools available to us to do things with technology. I'm starting with a quote from a person named Mitch Resnick, who is one of the founders of the lifelong kindergarten program at MIT. And Mitch and his team have been studying technology and kids for over 30 years. And they have been arguing that the rest of school, and quite frankly, the rest of life, should be more like kindergarten. He argues that in order to think and act creatively, and all ages must learn to focus more on imagining, creating, playing, sharing, reflecting, just as children do in kindergarten. But this kind of relationship with technology and creativity is not presented to us very often. Quite often, the evolution of technology is presented really similar to some of the things Mark showed us. So the evolution from mainframes to personal computers, to laptops, to smartphones that are now in the hands of over 2.1 billion people. But this eliminates a much broader perspective of what technology actually is and where creativity actually intersects. This much broader perspective of technology is actually about a much broader array of skills. It's about science, it's about technology, it's about engineering, it's about arts, and it's about maths. Throughout history, humans have been inventing, creating solutions to the most pressing things of the day, whether that be transportation, whether that be healthcare, whether that be streetlights or vaccinations. And couple that with the exponential growth of computing, and that's where things are getting quite interesting, especially for kids. But even with this pace of change, with the incredible inventions that Mark took us through, some of the most kind of relevant of today, this is still the scene that we often see our kids doing. Quite frankly, that we often see ourselves doing. This kind of consumptive behavior with technology is not really an accident. These devices were designed with consumption at the heart of them. They're designed to be really simple and really easy to use, which is great because the barrier to entry is very low. For those of you that have kids or grandkids or nephews or nieces that are even below the age of 3, watching them interact with smartphones and screens is amazing. It's so intuitive. However, the behavior is really about consumption, and that is by design. And so what we're building and what we're excited about sharing and talking about, and this is not necessarily the future, this is already here, it's just emerging, is a new category of technologies that are actually enabling. These are technologies that are designed from the heart of them with principles around being productive, about being creative with them. They include all kinds of different platforms. They are really representative of those skills that I discussed called STEM. Science, technology, engineering, now including arts, STEAM, arts, and maths. These kinds of technologies, some of your kids might be using in school right now. Things like Scratch, which were developed by MIT. It's a platform, it's the one right in the corner. It's a block-based programming language being used of tens of millions of kids globally, collaborating to make games and activities based on the passion and interest that they have. Immersive games like Minecraft, which I'm sure a lot of us know if we have children. These immersive games, kids are mining for materials like wood and iron and steel, building worlds that have animals and ecosystems and universes that they share with others, all the way to things like the microbit, which was a pocket-sized computer that we created with the BBC in 2016 that was given to 1 million kids and is now used in over 80 countries. This pocket-sized computer helps kids to become digital creators, essentially producing objects, prototypes, creations, inventions with craft and code. And this emerging productive technology is really what we're excited about and really what our methodology is about. And this, again, doesn't just happen on accident. It happens by design. One of the philosophies of these kinds of technologies is it has a low floor, which means that it's really easy to interact with. You can pick it up without much instruction or any previous use of any of these technologies. It's like playing a game. You're changing colors on something or making games with something. It's super, super easy to understand and begin to engage with. But it has a high ceiling, which means that it has enough capacity for a young person to do quite complex things. Things as complex as programming an entire video game with a scoring system, characters, multiplayer gaming, all programmed by an 8-year-old. This capacity of having a low floor and a high ceiling is fundamental to these kinds of enabling technologies that we're so excited to be a part of. In addition to that, it's really quite easy to observe those kinds of interactions with technology. Again, these interactions are very different than the ones that we might see where kids are kind of absorbed in consuming something in a very kind of unreactive way. When you start to see what these kinds of technologies enable, they kind of create a spiral. And we've kind of coined this kind of term, which is the creative making spiral. And I'll give you an example of what that might look like. So this funny device on my wrist is a wearable that kids can build and code themselves. So Isaac got one of these for Christmas. He built it himself. It took 15 minutes. He built it with circuit boards. It has 8 rainbow lights, a motion sensor, and a compass that he can program with a block-based system that he's used already in school and he understands. So Isaac makes it. He decides, okay, so it responds to my movement. I want to make a game with it. So he programs it. After 2 minutes of playing a game with his friends, he has a red light and he knows that he's out. So that game he just invented starts to help him understand how the sensor works, that it has a timer, that the timer can respond to his movement, that he can control all the lights. This kind of imagining that happens in the spiral triggers them to start to create something else. So he then decides, okay, I'm going to make something else. I'm going to play with it, and I'm going to share it. He gets feedback on a platform that he's uploaded that project from 350 kids around the world in the form of likes, in the form of ideas, in the form of things that are helping him to understand how to use that. So Isaac goes back to reflecting on what he's made, and he decides to make something else. And this time, he's going to solve a problem. Isaac's mom doesn't believe that he brushes his teeth at night for 2 minutes. So he decides to program the timer that he used for his game to have rainbow lights after he brushes his teeth for 2 minutes. So he brushes his teeth, shows his mom rainbow lights, and she knows he brushed his teeth. This cycle continues again and again and again. This is the way that productive technology looks when kids are playing with it, when they're using it, when they have the tools and the materials to actually invent and create things for them. And Isaac inventing the toothbrush trainer is a perfectly valid reason for an 8-year-old to want to program something, because it's meaningful to him, because he solved a problem, and he has the tools to do something with it. So this kind of spiral is the kind of work that we're excited about seeing happening in the world. And we've not invented some of these methodologies and philosophies. We've really built this on the shoulders of some really important psychologists, philosophers, mathematicians. So the first one that we've really spent a lot of time understanding is Jean Piaget. He's a Swiss psychologist that has been studying kids through observation and interacting and interviews. And he believed that kids were not vessels that you pour knowledge into, but rather that through constantly creating, revising, testing their theories about the world, through the things they play with, the toys they play with, and the people they interact with, they make sense of the world. And at different stages, from 4 to 6, From 7 to 10 and from 11 plus, their brains are developing differently, and therefore they need different kinds of stimulus. From 4 to 6, kids all about imagination. They're wanting to make sense of the world through imagining what they can do with it. From 7 to 10, it's all about mastery, giving someone like Isaac programming, code, to learn how to master it again and again and again so that he can decide what he wants to do with it. And from 11 plus, it's all about invention. Kids have made sense of the world, they're understanding what they want to do with it, and they have the tools to invent with it. Another person that's been a really important part of this kind of enabling technology ecosystem is Seymour Papert. Seymour Papert is a MIT mathematician. He was probably one of the most important godfathers of AI. He was the developer of one of the first programming languages for kids called Logo. He invented this not-so-small robot that kids could program to move around the space, to understand the first principles of what programming was. And I think most importantly what he developed was a philosophy around kids learning about technology through immersive, responsive experiences. And the last person that we've really built a lot of our kind of methodologies around is Maria Montessori, who some of you might know well through lots of schools that have taken on this methodology. And most importantly for Maria Montessori was that she gave kids real tools that were designed for them. It was their size, it fit their fingers, it had their best interests in mind in terms of enabling them. And that in order for them to use those things, they needed demonstration. They needed examples of how to use them in the most creative and interesting ways. So if you now apply that to technology, and you think about kids who are using technology in one kind of way, which is generally consumptive, they're making sense of the world through a very narrow lens. If you give that same child technologies that are enabling, that give them the tools to find the things that they're passionate about and to actually do something about that, that becomes really important. So this tool palette of technologies that we're excited about are actually really different than I think what I thought they were going to be when I became a mother. They are complex. There are some really high-tech things, but this tool palette is really diverse. It's everything from cardboard to sensors. It's microcontrollers and glue guns, and it's code and finger paint. These tools, this diverse mix of tools, is what's really enabling kids to be those creators of the technologies and the problems, and enabling them to solve those problems that we're so interested in understanding. So the world that we're really a part of creating is one where teachers are more facilitators for problem solving, where kids are not just playing video games, but they're programming their own video games and learning maths by programming complex systems around scorekeeping and character development, where kids can build their own thirst plant detectors that have solar powers and can tweet them when they want to know that their plant needs watering, where 6-year-olds can bring their Play-Doh to life because they've made it electronic, and they can make spaceships that light up and teddy bears whose eyes light up because that's what they wanted to do. Where kids can play games outside with sensors and lights and technology and create complex, all kinds of systems for how these games are played, whether it be old games or new games that they've invented. Where craft and technology are seen as the same, where kids are playing with technology the same way they're playing with Lego because it's accessible to them. And where time with technology for parents is not always seen as fear or as something separate, but maybe even considered a quality time together, and where kids are actually inventing and creating and learning by doing, not just consuming information. Because ultimately, it's not really just about technology, it's about kids, and it's about people. And it's about kids having access to the skills, the technologies that are designed to enable them to do what humans do best, which is to create things. Because ultimately, this world, the place we're at right now, needs creative thinking more than ever. Thank you very much.